Hey. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right?
All right.
You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. What is up, successful dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Tam Pham. Tam is an entrepreneur, author, and speaker. He's built and managed online and in-person communities with Mixergy, The Hustle, 500 Startups, Lean Startup, and also under James Altucher. He teaches a course with Andrew Warner on how to create messenger bots to grow your business, and he's written 2 books. The first of which is about teaching people how to network, and the second book is about teaching college students how to land their dream internship. So Tam, that's the intro I have for you, man, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. I'm great to be here, and thanks whoever's listening for tuning in. I guess a little bit myself, like you kind of listed all my accomplishments, but of course, like a person is much more than what their bio says, right? I guess my dropout story is growing up in the Bay Area. I was raised under very strict Asian parents, typical tiger moms who want straight A's and want me to be a doctor or a lawyer or accountant.
Did you call them tiger moms?
They're called tiger moms, yeah.
That's a term I haven't heard before. That makes sense, though.
Yeah, Asian moms are tiger moms. Basically, they just want you to do the excel in school, and education is a big part of their lives. And so when I went after I graduated high school, I applied to a bunch of different colleges, and I got rejected to like 8 out of the 11 colleges I applied for. And note that my school is super competitive. Like the average SAT score was like over 2,000. It was like insane. So every one of my friends went to like Berkeley, Stanford, UCLA, and here I am stuck at a local university, which is not a bad school. It was just like not great compared to my friends. I was like, man, this sucks. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to college and graduate. I'm gonna get a great job, probably at Google or something, and excel here. Like I can do anything, right? And so that was my mindset going into college. And after a year or two, I was like, man, this stinks. Like I'm not learning what I want to learn. I'm not getting challenged. I'm not being surrounded by people who are not like smarter or better than me, but more like people who challenge me to do more and think bigger. And I was also working on a startup at the time, and I was actually spending more time on that startup than actually studying and going to school. And so I was like, man, this really stinks. And that was a tipping point where I said, hey, I'm going to drop out and work on this business. I don't care if it fails. I don't care if it succeeds. I just know this is the right thing to do. And we can dive in deeper to like what the business is or how my parents thought about it or whatever. But long story short, I failed that business. And then I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to learn from the best entrepreneurs in the world and learn basically how they run a business. So I went to work under all those different companies you mentioned. I've landed more internships, 6 different internships before that. And now here I am. I'm 21 now, and I'm pretty happy with where things are going.
That's awesome, man. And just from what you were telling me before we started the interview, it sounds like you've got a really cool future ahead of you and a lot of opportunity because of the decisions you've now made and because of just learning by doing. So I want to take it back now to your dropout story and take me to that moment when you did decide to drop out. I mean, was there a conversation you had with somebody? What was that exact moment like, and how did that all go down?
Man, it was just like one rabbit hole after another. Like I started reading everything I could about dropping out of college, like everything on Reddit, everything posted by Seth Godin, James Altucher, Blake Bowles, and Make Your Own Lunch by Ryan Porter. And I started reading all these different things, and I started reading, okay, if these people can drop out of college and it worked for them, can it work for me? And there's a very like popular statistic like, oh, most college dropouts don't actually ever make it out, and they end up becoming a failure, right? And I was like, what did people who succeeded do differently? And so after going down the rabbit hole and getting more exposed to real people actually doing it, I was like, man, maybe I can do it. And it was very tough because, you know, growing up in this strict household and being surrounded by really like diligent friends, I was like an outcast. I was like an outsider to everything that everyone thought was normal. So it was very difficult for that moment.
So tell me what the conversation was like with your parents, because I know for a lot of people listening, if they're coming up on a decision like this, or if they've ever made this kind of decision, the parents can be the big barrier there, obviously. So what was that conversation like?
Yeah, I'll tell you the conversation, and then I'll tell you how to do better than this, because I was like a naive like 18-year-old who did not know how to handle difficult conversations. And so I parents questioned me like, hey, did you sign up for the next semester yet? Just make sure that I'm paying, and I picked up my classes. And I didn't even like give them a warning. I just kind of said like, hey, I don't think I want to go to school next semester. And then obviously they're like, what the hell? What are you talking about?
Just like that.
It was totally unplanned. It was like I wanted to tell them, and it was just that started this whole argument about like, what do you mean not going back to college? I want to start this business. Businesses fail, but Steve Jobs and Bill Gates did it. You're not Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. And it was just back and forth. And I did not.
You're not Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. I don't know why that's funny, but
sucked, yeah, it was insane. And my parents just didn't get it because they grew up thinking, because it worked for them, because that they succeeded through college, they succeeded through getting a 9-to-5, and that's how it should be for their children. And I totally understand that. But at the time, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, it's a digital age. You can learn anything from anywhere. You can build businesses. Worst case, you can go back to college.
You sound like me, man.
Exactly. So it was a back and forth conversation, and that happened for a couple of weeks, and then eventually months. And I did not have a really good relationship with my parents after that. Like, I still live in the house, and I still went to college. I lived at home because it was my local university. But it was just so sad because I wanted to pursue this dream that I had, and I didn't have support from the people I loved.
I'm sorry. That part is not funny, but I'm still thinking about what your parents said, because that's such a parent thing to do. Like, but Bill Gates and Steve Jobs did it. You're not Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. I could just see that conversation going down.
They literally said, it's so funny.
Well, okay. So then tell us. So out of that experience, then how can somebody who's listening do better? What would you suggest?
It's very much like a sales call or any marketing call you do. You want to come at it to where, like, you want to handle their objections right away and tell them very calmly that this is what I'm going to do. Here's why I'm going to do it. Here's who succeeded. Here's the path that I'm going to take. Here's my plan. Worst case, here's my plan B. Worst case, here's my plan C. So you come into like a sales meeting, you do the exact same thing when you pitch a product. I should have done the exact same framework or structure when I came into this difficult conversation with my parents. But looking back, it was like, obviously I should have done that. But at the time, it was just like I was so frustrated at the system, at school, and I was focused on my startup. No idea about emotional intelligence or just like talking, being honest with my parents.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. And I love what you said there, to kind of lay out the plan for them. For those of you who have just started listening to the show, if you go back several episodes to where I was doing the Fast Advice Fridays, there is an episode on how to talk to your parents, and we talk about different strategies. And one of those is just laying out a plan and say, for instance, Mom and Dad, I'm going to take a year. I'm going to work on this business, and if we reach these kinds of benchmarks, or maybe I'm going to try to go get this kind of job, if you're not wanting to be an entrepreneur, and if we reach these kinds of benchmarks, you agree to let me continue to opt out of college. If not, then I will agree to go back. And so there's a bunch of different ways to just be a little more proactive, present a plan. And that's really, because your parents care about you, and that's what they want to hear, that you're not going to end up on the street somewhere, cooking over an open flame, begging for money, right? And that's why I started this podcast, is to pull other people out of the woodwork like yourself, Tam, the people who aren't Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, the people we hear about all the time, because there's so many amazing people like yourself and the other guests I've had on the show who are making it, and they got off the treadmill, they're forging their own path, and people just don't get to hear about that story. So
yeah, hey, I actually don't think you remember, but when you asked me to be on the podcast, on the Successful Dropout, I told you I wouldn't be a good guest. I'm not successful.
I remember. You were just like, I don't consider myself successful yet, so no. It's like, what?
What did you say? I forgot.
I don't remember. I don't even know. I was emailing so many people back then, trying to get people on the show. I don't know if I ever emailed you back, but I remember thinking I didn't think oh, that's rude or whatever. I was like, I respect that. That makes sense, because success is relative, right? It's not, success doesn't mean you're a multi-millionaire and you have a beach house and a mountain house or whatever. It's definitely relative. And I was like, well, maybe he'll come on later, and here you are.
Boom.
So I'm curious about something, Tam. Actually, I'll ask that question later. What was the startup you were working on that caused you to drop out, actually, and how did that go?
Yeah, the startup was called Student Hero, and it connected high school students to internships and summer programs, because when I was in high school, I had no idea about these DECA competitions or computer science boot camps and stuff as teens, entrepreneurship camps. I was like, man, if I did that in high school, I would have had more direction in college. So I wanted to build that platform. And long story short, build a business, not a hobby.
Okay, so was it like an app?
It was like a web platform, and the reason it didn't work out when I said it was a hobby is because it didn't make revenue, or it didn't have enough demand for companies to say hey, I want to pay you to hire high school students, or I want to pay you to attract high school students to my summer program.
Okay, and so what you learned from that is to build a business, not a hobby. So why was that a hobby? Was it just you weren't able to generate revenue from it, basically?
Yeah, no
You're
revenue.
Just passionate about it.
I mean, we worked on it like a hobby. We loved it like a hobby, but a business makes money. And we made the typical first-time founder mistakes, like buying business cards, buying T-shirts, buying stickers.
Oh yeah.
Starting a blog, and we didn't actually solve the problem. We were just skirting around and building the product and trying to be flashy without actually solving a real problem.
I see. So what, for people listening then, how does that work then if you were to suggest a better way to launch your first startup? Because that I hear you, and I've done that. I know what you're talking about. You get a cool idea and you think this could be the next Google, and so then you start making T-shirts. First thing you do is get a business card and a website, and you feel super accomplished. All that stuff comes secondary to what? What's the most important thing to do first?
The most important thing is to solve somebody's problem. So if I were to do it over again, I would go to a company hiring interns. I say, hey, do you want to hire high school interns? Is that a big pain for you? Would you pay for it? I would go to a summer camp or summer program and talk to the head of marketing and say, hey, how much does it cost to acquire a new high school student? What if I can acquire the same high school student for less money? Would you want my service? And before I build anything, before I build an email list, a blog, a website, a business card, if people say yes to me, I immediately say, okay, boom, I got a business, or I got at least some revenue coming in, or I got a customer. Instead of
that's that lean startup concept, huh?
Yeah, you mentioned I worked there as well. So I'm all about that thinking lean and staying lean personally too.
Totally. And also one other question, when you were launching that or getting really into that, was there anybody else doing that, or were you kind of the first on the scene there? Because I know that is something too. If you can have maybe even a competitor, a proof of concept, and then you have kind of these second mover advantages. Was there anybody else doing that at the time?
Not for high school students specifically. There were mostly college students, like Way Up, for example, or internships.com or CareerMat. Like connecting college students to internships, and there are some like platforms that connected all kids of all ages to summer programs, but none specifically for high school students.
Okay,
So,
and you think that model maybe specifically, or that demographic just for high school students is not what was working? You might have made one for college students successful, or that might have had a better chance?
well, the reason why the college platforms are successful is because there are companies willing to pay for college interns. Not a lot of companies are willing to pay a lot of money for high school interns, even though it's a huge benefit for the high school intern. So, although we had 2 customer audiences, the one that paid did not want it.
I see. Okay. So what was the moment then you decided, like, this is just not a good idea, it's not viable, and what did you do next?
After that, I was pretty stumped because we were working on it for like 9 months, and it was a long time. It was like it was insane.
It's a lot of
we went through this entrepreneurship course at San Jose State University with this project idea, and for some reason, I don't know why, none of them spotted this problem out. So
imagine that.
That's kind of insane. It was a class where we had to work on our startup, and every week mentors came in and like taught us about our business and gave us coaching and stuff. And then we had to learn the hard way, even though one of those veterans could tell us like, hey, there's no demand for this, or have you talked to this audience? So that's kind of funny.
Have you actually done your research?
It's insane. So that's another con of that class specifically. But after that, I was like, man, I can either go back to college, which would be kind of embarrassing because I just dropped out. I just justified everything that this is going to work, and it didn't. Or I can make another business, or I can learn from people who have been there before. So that was when I started looking for and reading books and looking for people to apprentice under or intern under to learn more about business.
Okay, and so on that subject, Tam, there's you have a list of articles on your website, which there's a lot of. I mean, your website's really simple, and there's a lot of cool stuff on there, including there's an article that I think is the one I found you on. It's is a college degree worth it in 2016? That was published on The Hustle, and that is, for those of you listening, is an incredible article, and maybe we can go into that a bit. But you mentioned kind of mentorship and getting with people who knew more than you. And you have a title here that said, How I Got James Altucher, Tim Ferriss, and Pat Flynn to be my mentors. And I haven't read it, but talk to us a little bit about that, because those are some big names. I love those guys. Yeah,
definitely. And I think the word mentor has people interpret it differently. When I say mentor, I think of anyone who can teach you something. Mm-hmm. And the reason I got those big names to be a mentor is because I've read their books. I listened to their podcasts. I've read their articles, and I follow their work. And so even though I never met them in person, virtually, they're my virtual mentors. And then you have your in-person mentors, who are the ones who are in your like immediate network. And then you have other people who you learn from. Your even your own friends. That's who you want to be surrounded with. Those are your mentors as well. So anyone who can teach you something important, I consider to be a mentor.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think sometimes people focus so much on, I need this big name to call me personally for an hour every week, when if they have a lot of material out like these guys obviously do, they'd probably just be regurgitating the same stuff that, that's the reason you write a book, is so you can spread out your influence.
Yeah. I mean, those guys like changed my life like more than most people I know in person. So it's kind of insane how you can impact somebody. And I'm sure you have this too, where someone listens to your podcast or your other work and be like, wow, this has changed the way I think about this, and I took action. Like, thank you.
Yep.
Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love getting those emails, people. Those of you listening, send me emails. I love it. I love talking to you guys. Tam, so the article, Is a College Degree Worth it in 2016? Do you remember enough about that article to kind of give us a synopsis on that? Because you had a really cool breakdown about this is why people go to college, and then you actually like analyzed like this is what you do at college. So does it actually accomplish these goals, and can you do the same thing in the outside world?
Yeah. Well, let me go to the article just to refresh my memory.
Yeah, sure.
But if I remember correctly, like I was just saying, like some parts of college is great, and then other parts of not going to college is also great. And I kind of said, oh, if you fall into this bucket, this will probably appeal more to you. So while the article is loading, like I actually think 90% of people, 95% of people should go to college. I think many people who drop out can't handle being like independent, motivating themselves to learn, self-directing their own education and taking it seriously. So that's my thing. Okay, here it is. I broke it down into 4 different parts. Like why you should go to college, right? And it says to meet new people, to get a good education, to learn about yourself, and to get a good job after graduation. So just to quickly break that down. Number 1, how much is meeting people worth? And, you know, I'm a big fan of like who your network is and who you know, because those are the main people who drive your environment and success. And so
Totally.
When it comes to college wins, hands down. There's no other place where 18 to 22-year-olds can aggregate and meet each other in that age group. But if you think about it, that's the only time, besides like a retirement home, where you're surrounded by people your own age, exclusively your own age. So college wins for sure. Next is how much is a good education worth? And now then that you have to define like what do you mean by good education? So for example, I brought up a story where Scott Young, who is a self-directed learner, he went to college actually, but he actually after college he wanted to learn computer science. So MIT had all the classes there online for free. So what he did was instead of going to MIT for 4 years and learn computer science and pay $200,000, he just bought $2,000 worth of textbooks, and over the course of 10 months, he took all the required tests and courses that MIT put up online for free. And even though he didn't have an official degree from MIT, employers still wanted to hire him. And you're like, why? Because he's self-directed, he motivates himself to learn, and he has a skill. So I guess like at the end of the day, that's what employers are looking for.
So he went through all the same motions as somebody who actually paid for the courses. He just did not get the certificate or the degree at the end of it.
Exactly. And I think it's amazing. And Berkeley has their lectures on for free. There's like the YC Combinator founders teaching how to start a startup for free online. It's kind of insane how much knowledge is out there, and it really questions like what is the value of a good education in quotation marks.
Oh, that's crazy. It perfectly illustrates this point that colleges are basically credentialing factories, that the only reason people go to college is for that piece of paper at the end of it. Otherwise, they would not pay all that money and spend all of that time learning all that stuff. I mean, ask anybody, or any of you guys listening who are going to college, if you went through all the motions, did everything you're doing, but at the end of it, you don't get your degree, would you still go? And the answer is almost always no, because it's all about that credential. But it's what you were saying earlier, Tam, about having access to technology and being able to leave a digital footprint and stuff like that. It's becoming easier and easier to credential, to auto credential, basically, and build that signal yourself for employers. So.
Yeah, and it's insane. You would think that, hey, I want to go to college to learn, to meet new people, to have fun. But no, people want to go for a degree. And that kind of blows my mind, because if you think about it from a business standpoint, colleges are the most like profitable organizations out there. Student loan debt is like $1.2 trillion, number one contributor to debt. And it's something that you can't file bankruptcy for. And that sounds like a big number, but that basically means that all these kids are taking out tons of money, giving to these colleges, who in turn, have you bending over like for the next couple years after college just to pay it off. And most of the time, I argue also in the article that like most of the time, I think I forgot the exact number, but I think it was like one fourth or one half of college graduates get a job that doesn't require a college degree after college.
Right.
And that's insane. That's absolutely insane. You pay $100,000 and you don't even get a job that's
average of 5 years of your time. Yep. It's
I can go on, and I'm sure many of your other guests talked about these kind of like insane things, but however direction you want to go.
So back to the article here. After that, you've got college one for the networking, and then dropping out has another point there.
Yeah. The next point is, how much is getting a good job worth? Oh, here, that's the point I just made. So it says here, why do college grads make up 40% of the U.S. unemployment pool? Why do 46% of college grads work jobs that don't require a degree? So it was like almost half. And it's kind of insane. So I mentioned in the article, like for some jobs, degrees are like mandated. Like you can't become a teacher, doctor, or lawyer without a degree. Right. But even in those careers where college is a legit investment, it only works if you stay on that path for the rest of your life. But think about it. How often do you hear stories of people changing careers when they get older? Millennials, if you're listening to this, like typically switch careers every 4 years. So how can you even be so sure if you want to do one thing for the rest of your life at 18 years old? Mm-hmm. And if you want to do something different, it can be even risky because, one, you don't know what the jobs will be like in 10 years, 25 years, 50 years. How can you train college students for jobs that didn't exist yet because of some new technology? Like 20 years ago, no one knew Facebook ads would be a profitable job to totally do. Like, what the hell is Facebook, right? So it's kind of insane how fast this world is moving, and how staying in one path and one degree might actually even be more riskier because of the opportunity costs when you're young.
That's such a great point, why it's so important to be really introspective when you're that young and really figure it out. It is, maybe you are supposed to be a teacher for long term, but you'll find, and Tam, I'm sure you've noticed this too, an increasing amount of entrepreneurs, they're not creating like 5, 10, 20-year goals anymore, because things are just progressing too fast. Things can change just instantly in 3 months, which is also detrimental with the textbooks and school system. I mean, if you're studying like computer science, for instance, technology progresses so fast. By the time you get a textbook written and approved and all this stuff, almost everything's going to be obsolete. So I mean, I could go on, but continue there with the article.
The last point, let me see. It was like, the common objection is like, but colleges but companies won't hire you without a degree, and people are like, oh man, I will never work at this company, and that's probably true for a lot of companies. They're very old school, like accounting firms or big corporations. They probably want someone with a degree because that's how it's always been done. But now that things are changing, more companies are being more open-minded to hire people with skill, with work experience, rather than a degree. Like, for example, Google, they don't even check degrees anymore. The CEO or the chairman of hiring in the New York Times said, like, when you look at people who don't go to school and make their way in the world, those are exceptional human beings, and we should do everything we can to find those people. And I was like, that's awesome. And also, like, another valid question to ask is, like, why would you even want a job that requires a bachelor's degree? And Michael Ellsberg Seth Godin, in an interview with Michael Ellsberg, he's a famous entrepreneur, speaks about alternative education. He says, if the way they're deciding that they should hire you, if you have a history of compliance, which is what school is, I'm not sure that's going to put you on the arc to get you where you want to go. And so he also goes on, like, we want it both ways. We say, I want to be innovative, artistic, creative in my career, but I want a job with 50,000 employees that interviews me on campus. Well, why are you surprised that after you get the job, they treat you like a cog in the system? Because that's who came to that's who they came to on campus to hire. So Seth Godin just keeps it real. And at the end of the article, it talks about college having 1 point, dropping out having 3 points. The argument.
Yeah, I love it, man. And that article's got almost 500 shares here. So we're going to put that in the show notes. I would highly recommend you guys reading that, because it's great. So Tam, another question I have for you is, maybe some people listening know this, but I don't. So what are messenger bots?
This is insane. Who would have ever thought that a year ago I would say I do messenger bots now? No one ever. So think about email marketing, except now think messenger marketing. The premise is that right now, email is at its all-time low. 20% average open rates, 5% average click rates. and businesses are finding it much harder to reach their audience. But think about how you text your friends, your coworkers, your family. You do all through messaging apps, through iMessage, through Slack, through Facebook Messenger. That's how we talk to our friends. So why aren't businesses going to the places where everyone's at? Why are we still in this email world where people are ignoring us the whole time, when people are opening our messages on every other messaging platform? And so the premise of what I'm doing right now is we're teaching how businesses can use Messenger to market and to get new leads, to generate revenue or close sales or handle customer support. And we firmly believe this will be the new way and the more preferred way customers would want to talk to their companies.
So it's like text messages, basically, but with, right?
Yeah. Think email marketing, but except on Messenger.
Okay. Gotcha. So are there is there a certain platform that you work with, or do you just direct people to several different platforms, or?
There's a platform we build it on, but it'll literally just be like someone sending you a message on Facebook, teaching you, for example, like if you're into running,
I see.
You're subscribed to this running bot, and the running bot will ask you a question like, hey, are you an experienced runner or a newbie runner? You click on the button experience, and then it says, okay, great. What is your biggest challenge right now? And then they give you 3 options. You choose one of the options, and then that puts you into sequences on the back end saying like, oh, this guy's an experienced runner. So we're basically gathering customer data on you, and it's kind of fun to do this little quiz thing, and we segment you so that we can customize our messages to you. So if we have a marathon going on, we're not gonna send it to the newbie runner. We're gonna send that marathon to you. We're gonna send these really expensive running shoes to you. We're gonna send these experienced running tips to you personally, and you'll actually open it because you're on Messenger. And we switched in Mixergy from email to Messenger. It's kind of embarrassing. We have a huge email list. We get 10% open rate. We switched to Messenger. We're at 80% open rate, 50% click rate. And that's unheard of in any industry ever. And we have like a few thousand people on the Facebook bot. It's insane.
That's incredible. So how do people have to opt into something like that then? Like they do email?
Exactly. So one way to opt in, for example, is, hey, if you want this free PDF, click here. And instead of entering your email and typing and clicking submit, all you have to do is say send to Messenger. One button, boom, you get it in your inbox right away. Another cool option is you can post a post on your Facebook page and say, hey, comment on this post if you want this new secret or this new growth hack or whatever. And someone comments on the page, on that post, and the page automatically responds to your inbox immediately.
Wow.
This is like very new. No one knows about this except like the early adopters in marketing, but we want to be like the first movers in the space. We're like, hey, we want to be the go-to place to learn everything you can about this. We're going to test everything out. We're going to run ads. We're going to test out the comment feature and all these other growth tools and show you how to best do it. And then if you like us, then you can join our premium course.
That's crazy. So when you say Messenger, though, is that just Facebook Messenger, or are you talking like text messaging and stuff too, or just Facebook?
For my purpose, it's just Facebook Messenger because there's 1 billion people who are actively using it. Not just users.
Right.
1 billion active monthly users, which is kind of insane. And some of you guys think like, oh, I don't use Facebook Messenger. Well, it doesn't matter because your customers do. And that's where you want to reach them, not through email. Or there's a new medium to reach it. And we're not saying like email is dead, because email, if it's working for you, then that's perfectly fine. We're saying that we're getting 80% open rates, 50% click rate. You can't ignore that. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to stick to what I do. This is going to be the future. And you got to jump on now or suffer the consequences.
So you teach the course with Andrew Warner, and obviously it sounds like you've got a great, there's some great benefits to that. How long have you been doing that then?
The Messenger bot course specifically, maybe like 3 months.
3 months. So where do you see that headed in the future then? What's the kind of the grand vision?
For us, or for me personally, or for the company?
Yeah, I guess for maybe you with bot messaging or messenger bots. Yeah.
I want to be like the Michael Jordan of messenger bots. So
Gotcha.
I want to be so good. So I want to create the best bots out there with the best user experiences, best design, best everything. So then I can be a better teacher and teach everything I know to everyone who joins our course or everyone who logs onto our or consumes our content online. And I'll basically be like, I don't want to say it, but like a thought leader in this,
Right.
because like selfishly, like I made a lot of products, but I sell it to the youth market, and I'm sure you noticed as well. But many people who don't pay for stuff or pay highly for stuff is like 18 to 22 year olds, and I make products for them, and it's like, oh man, I can't really make a business out of it. I can make a passion doing it. And actually, I take that back. You can make a business with doing almost anything, but me personally, the market is much bigger to entrepreneurs who are already spending on online marketing, who are already doing this. So if I can be a thought leader or like an expert in this field, I'll have a much better chance of success of making my own business around this space.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think you're on the right track there, man. Become an authority in that space, and pretty soon people will be coming to you, and then you've got your customer base right there, pretty much.
Yeah,
Love it.
Actually, I would. I used to think that entrepreneurship was the only way out. I actually love working under companies. I can just say to anyone like, "Hey, I work with Mixergy. I'm teaching a course with Andrew Warner.
Yeah.
Can we get coffee or whatever my request
Right.
is?" And people are instantly like, "Man, I love Mixergy." Same thing when I worked at the Hustle and Lean Startup or 500 Startups. They're like, "Man, I love those companies." Like, heck yeah, and having that like credibility with me is incredible. So, I have a lot of street cred now to do things that I normally wouldn't get to do on my own, which is awesome.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's such an important note that, I started this show just wanting to interview entrepreneurs and with just this focus on entrepreneurship, because that's what I do. That's what I'm passionate about. But man, throughout the course of it, I've just realized that's definitely not the only way you can land your dream job. You can work for startups. Really, the entrepreneurial part is just, it's in your mind. It's a mindset. It's an entrepreneurial. You might not always have your own business and be leading your own company, but you have an entrepreneurial mind, and that makes you valuable to a lot of these newer startups and dynamic companies. Mm-hmm. And you're finding your sweet spot. And so I think that's really important to point out for people listening. You don't always have to have your own business. You can do what Tam's doing here.
Yeah, and he gives me autonomy. I have autonomy over my own projects, my own hours. How I have a big influence on how I want the course to be, how I want the direction of our content site to go. So I'm doing everything what an entrepreneur would do, except I'm teaming up with like some of the best people in this space, and I'm learning from one of the best entrepreneurs I know. Which is another crazy thing, because I would never imagine working with like one of my role models. I used to listen to Andrew. For those who don't know who Andrew Warner is, like he's the founder of Mixergy, been podcasting for almost 10 years now. I've been listening to that guy. Interviewing other successful entrepreneurs, and now I'm working with him. That's insane. I met some of the bloggers that I read in person. I'm like, man, I can't believe like I you changed my life. Like, this is insane how I'm meeting you right now. It's awesome.
I love that, and you've just put yourself in that position by working hard and staying consistent and staying focused on a vision there, man. I love it. So you've written 2 books, and the one is it's How to Network, build instant trust and respect with anyone you meet. So tell me about that. Tell me about the importance of networking and what people can do to network better. I mean, I admit I probably don't do it well enough.
Well, yeah, that book was a very fun one to write. Just because I added like funny pictures in there, and I gotta really show my personality, and people love that. I was like super informal in that book, and people like ironically you would think, oh, a book's supposed to be professional, but it was professional, but still like playful and like engaging, which was awesome. I guess I want to start out just briefly with networking. The word networking is not what people think it might be. When people think of networking, or at least when I thought about networking, I thought it was, oh, you gotta like meet people and give business cards and play golf and all this like crazy things. And I realized like to give the Cliff Notes version of the book, networking is actually just making friends. And so everyone listening has made friends before. Some of us might not be as good as others, but we've made friends. And if you think about every single thing in that framework, in that mindset, then you'll be able to meet with so much more. And it makes perfect sense. Like, you want friends who support you, appreciate you, love you, want the best for you. Isn't that the same thing you want for your business connections as well? And so when you shift that mindset, then you start going to these networking events or meeting people online and just becoming friends in general. And you were gonna say something? It seemed like it.
No. Keep going. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So the reason I wrote that book is because I thought I was a big problem. I thought I was not extroverted enough. I thought people didn't like me, or I wasn't important enough, or I was too young. But really, networking is all about just making friends. And the best way to make friends who become your long-lasting relationships are those who you give to. And the secret of networking is giving. And people, the reason I say that is because people often think, okay, when I go to a networking event, what's in it for me? If I talk to somebody, what's in it for me? Oh, you're not important. You don't work at Google. You're not like working for a big company. I don't want to talk to you. That's the opposite mindset you should have. I think you should meet people in all spaces, and to build a long-lasting relationship, you want to give to them. One, because of psychology, because of the law of reciprocity. The more you give to somebody, the more psychological urge they have to give back to you. But really, just to be a kind human being. And when you give to somebody, either giving an introduction, giving an article they might like, giving even just a compliment, that's how you really start the relationship on a pure and genuine note, instead of saying, hey, you work at Google. Can I talk to somebody there for a job?
That's phenomenal. And it sounds like you've really just done that well to get in the position you're in, where you're surrounded by all these great people and you're continuing to build your network, and they're going to help take you to the next level. And then in turn, you'll be able to network with other people who were where you were.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I am blown away by how generous these, uber successful people are, or who are willing to help me out. It's kind of insane. And because they're running like these big businesses, and I always want to ask them, like, why are you helping me? Like, you don't have to do this. Like, I talked to this one guy. He's 26. Jack Smith. He started two $100 million companies before he was 26, and I was chatting to him about something about my career, and I asked for like a 5-minute phone call, and we were on the phone for like 45 minutes. He was just giving me advice on how to tell my all these technical stuff, but he was just like so generous, and I was like, man, can I like buy you a cookie or something? Like, can I don't know, can I give something back to you? And,
can I buy you a cookie?
Or something?
Dude, say that to me, man. I'll say yes all day. Yeah, let's go.
Can I buy you something? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. And I'm just blown away. So
yeah,
I guess you can be super smart and super ambitious, but the people who really get to the top are the ones who have this tribe and who have this like personal advisory board of people who want the best for you.
So Tam, I want to get a little more into that. Tell me about like practically what are some, I mean, obviously you're where you are now, and you're friends with creating and managing online communities with Mixergy and The Hustle and 500 Startups, Lean Startup under James Altucher and stuff. What can you tell me some of the practical ways that you actually got in touch with these people, maybe provided some value to them to where they were wanting to meet with you and hang out with you? And
yeah, so I remember a couple of really concrete examples. The biggest one that stuck out to me the most was when I volunteered for conferences. So I would volunteer for entrepreneurial conferences because I don't have money to pay for them. So
brilliant.
That was the approach. But
that's like volunteering for a concert series so you can go for free. I did that once.
Yeah, of course.
I like that.
And I did it because I thought it was for the content, but I actually met really great people while volunteering, and I also got really close to the organizers. So when I volunteered for example, at the Lean Startup Conference, I got really close to the organizers. I did a kick-ass job with them, and the year after, when I wanted to volunteer again, they said, "Hey, you shouldn't volunteer. We actually have a position open for you. If you want to, we need someone to help run this thing. Would you want to take it?" Like, heck yeah, let's do it. And I'm like 19. And so I was like, man, heck yeah. Same thing with The Hustle. I volunteered at one of their conferences called HustleCon. And 6 months later, I asked the CEO for advice. I said, hey, I'm looking to join a rocket ship company, which is like a fast growing company. What company should I join? And he said, come join us. So literally the next week, I signed the offer and I ended up sleeping on his couch for 3 months. Basically being surrounded by him like 24 hours a day, like with the CEO of the company. And The Hustle was a media company now with like 300,000 email subscribers in less than a year. Kind of insane. But
wow.
It was just like, so volunteering was like one thing, and I can go on with more examples, but it's very serendipitous. I never volunteered for the intention of like, hey, I'm going to work for you one day. I volunteered because I want to learn and meet people. And in turn, those people became my peers who became my managers.
So you slept on his couch for like 3 months, and man, I love that, man. And now I people listening, we were talking a little bit before the show and stuff, and of course Tam is he's got a great kind of future ahead of him. He's settled into something he knows he wants to do long term, and of course surrounded by these awesome people because of this networking skill. And he's location independent, and we were talking about where he wants to move next. He's in California, and that kind of autonomy and freedom is just there's nothing else like it. And so
yeah, well, I do want to add on to that, because it sounds really great, but it took like four years of like shit. Oh, I don't know if I can cuss on here.
That's
but
fine. Yeah.
Okay. 4 years of just like hard work of hustling, sleeping on couches, taking a train to volunteer at a conference that I don't have money for, just like a bunch of hustle and grind, to kind of get to this position. So, looking back, like, oh, I can say it was easy, but it wasn't. It was a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears. I do want to say that I'm very grateful for all the opportunities. I feel like if you put yourself in a position to be lucky, you'll get lucky. And luckily, I want to preface that I was born in a middle-class family in the Bay Area. So that was definitely a big plus to me in my, where I came from.
And how old are you now?
I'm 21.
So you're 21, but I mean, your peers who went to college, they've still got maybe another year left before they graduate, and they're seniors right now, and the position you're in versus where they're in, they're going to have to start basically from scratch here in another year. It's insane. Like I'm totally bragging and putting myself on the map right here, but I'm literally making more. I'm making more money, having more happiness in my career, and location independent without even graduating from college. And that to me is like a huge win, because I would never imagine I'd be in this position right now. So fuck it. I'm humble bragging myself. I'm not even humble. I'm just bragging right now. No, that's perfect, man. You deserve it. Do you have really quick, maybe a quick moment in time or a story that you'd consider to be your worst entrepreneurial moment, or just a time? I mean, you talked about the grind and how tough it was. Is there a particular story that stands out to you where you're just kind of miserable, I guess?
Yeah. It was after my first company, Student Hero. It just went down. My co-founder and I just split ways, and I was there thinking like, man, I was so confused. I had no idea what to do next. I had no idea if I should go back to college, start a startup, go work for somebody else. I didn't have much of a resume because I didn't go to college. I didn't work for anyone yet. So that was like the worst moment probably, because I felt so lost. And I felt like if I went back to college, I would basically let my parents say like they were right. And I had such a big ego at the time. I was like, no, I do not want that. So I guess from that moment on, I was like gonna do everything I can to make this work, and luckily it did. Or not luckily, but with hard work and calculated risk, it did. But that moment was just like pretty depressing.
Tam, if you could time travel back to day one of your entrepreneurial journey and have 10 minutes with your former self to communicate any lessons you've acquired with the intention of saving yourself mistakes and heartache, what do you think you'd tell yourself?
Oh, so much. Um, the answer you don't want to hear is it's fate. Everything happens for a reason. I learned everything from it. But I think your listeners want something more than that. If I were to go back to my like 18, 17-year-old self, I would say like, hey, there's many different paths to success. College is not the only one, so you don't have to drop out, but you should consider it. That's an option. I think I would tell my younger self that when you're young, you should opt. I'm still young. I still tell myself this: you should optimize for learning. And there's two different types of learning: learning in terms of depth, which is like really deep into one subject, or breadth, which is a little slice of knowledge in many different topics of the world.
Yeah.
And I really think you should optimize for breadth, because the best ideas come from when you combine more ideas from outside perspectives together. So I think you should use your time when you're 17 to 20, 21 now to learn as much as possible, build a network to, it doesn't matter what field you're in. It doesn't have to be like messenger bots 4 years earlier. It should just be surround yourself with top performers who are in your, who are kind of your age group, or for your tribe. You should find mentors who would want to help you succeed and would want the best for you. And you just learn. The biggest thing would just be to learn. Read as many books as you can, which I've done, and find opportunities where you can put yourself in a position to be lucky and learn and meet people.
So optimize for breadth, and I've heard that described differently by, you can learn something, you can go a mile deep and an inch wide, or a mile wide and an inch deep. But so you're saying, well, you're young, to optimize for breadth and learning about a bunch of different stuff, get out there, explore, gain some perspective. Then you can, like, it sounds like you've started to hone in on something that you really found some potential for, and now you're starting. It sounds like you're starting to go the inch wide, mile deep now where you're at.
Yeah, now it is. But I still believe you should go deep in some areas, but you should optimize for breadth. Like, you can be, for example, a really great writer or a great marketer, but you should not ignore learning about philosophy or psychology or other things that could spark insights in whatever you're doing.
That's awesome. Well, last couple questions here, Tam. What's some parting advice that you'd have for any of our listeners who are thinking of dropping out of college, but they haven't quite made that step yet? Just some parting words of advice.
90% of you should stay in college. That's probably advice you don't want to hear, but that's the hard truth. Like I said earlier, like, most of y'all like won't be able to handle like the mental pressure, the social pressure, the independence, the motivation to self-direct your own learning. You guys won't have the discipline to do that, and that's perfectly okay. We grew up in a society where we've always been structured, and that's the way it's always been done, and that's the way we're familiar with. So it's 100% okay to stay in college, but just know to optimize for those things I mentioned earlier. And even if it's without college or with college, you should always try to be learning, growing your network, and think about the decision really hard. It's not as easy as like, oh, I hate school, I want to drop out. Why do you hate school? Why are you bad at school? What about school is so challenging? And if school is so challenging, is dropping out even the right answer? There's different ways to drop out. Like, I dropped out because it was not helping me towards my goals. I was spending more time on my startup than actually studying and learning in class, and I was learning more outside of the classroom. So that's why I dropped out. Some people, I talk to dropouts all the time. They say, oh, school's hard, I'm getting D's and F's, I just want to drop out and do my own thing. I say, do you have discipline to even get an A in a structured class? If you can't do that, then how do you expect to get structured, or make your own structure for something else? So those are my parting words of advice is, most of you should stay in college, and if you do drop out, optimize for the right things.
Yeah, love it. Last question here. What advice do you have for any of our listeners who have already dropped out and who are maybe where you're at? If you already dropped out, still optimize for the same things. I think that's a common goal when you're young, to optimize for learning. And in general, you should always be growing your network and deepening those relationships. So if you did drop out, you should connect with other dropouts. You should
have mentors or like your own personal advisory board, kind of like somewhat people looking over you, mentors, and helping sure that you're on the right track, to help you out and support you.
Yep. Awesome,
that
man.
would probably be it. Yeah.
So speaking of connecting with other dropouts, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Connect with me through email. You can do it at WRITE, WRITE, to Tam Pham, TOTAMPHAM @gmail.com. Also, you have my website, tampham.co. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter. Like, I love talking to dropouts. If you send me an essay, I probably won't give you an essay back, but I will read it. And I just love talking to other self-directed learners.
Awesome. We'll have all that in the show notes. And Successful Dropouts, you've been hanging out with Tam and Kylan, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type TAM, T-A-M, into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish. Successful Dropouts, if you could go to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review, it would help this show out a lot. I know you're busy, I know you got a lot going on, but if you do that, it helps this podcast rank, it helps other people listen to it and gain value just like you have been. Thank you so much in advance.